Hello, people of the world, and welcome back on the Marry in Motion podcast. Today I want to talk about one of the biggest and first trip I ever took alone. When I started the podcast, it was one of the first things I wanted to tell you, but then many things happened and I preferred to talk about something that I was living at the moment. So for example, the fact that I was in Nepal was very recent, so I decided to do an episode about that. What I want to tell you happened in the beginning of the year 2024. It's not long ago, but because it happened before I had the podcast, I had a hard time finding the right place to put it. So let me set the scene. I was in my last year of my engineering program, so I had to do my master's thesis somewhere. Most of the people started their thesis right after the classes ended. So classes ended around beginning of January, and everyone had their thesis in the end of January or February. However, I managed to find an opportunity to do my thesis in Japan. It was something weird, and they had different dates, and it was not really a thesis, but then they did it for me or something. So it started in April. So what was I to do during 3 months before my thesis? So I decided to go and travel Asia, because anyway I would go to Japan, so I might as well travel beforehand in the same continent. I left for 3 months and I traveled Asia. There is so much to say that I divided this trip in several episodes. So today will only be the first part where I was not alone. I was with my boyfriend at the time. So this will be how I became accustomed to Asia with a guide. So not really on my own. And then the next episodes will be going deeper in the solo travel. I had never set foot in Asia before. And it was honestly very scary for me, because I thought that the culture was so different from my own. I was scared of misunderstanding stuff. I was very scared of accidentally being rude. And I was scared of having too big of a culture shock. So I never considered Asia before. But when I got this opportunity for Japan, I said yes. And so here I was, going for my first ever solo trip in Asia, the continent I was so scared of. I really thought it was important to tell you all that, because some people might see me as fearless, and because everything I'm telling you, I'm just going abroad on my own in countries I've never been to, and so it might seem a bit reckless, but I was not always like this. And during this first trip, I was very scared, but I think the strength I have is that even though I'm scared, I'm doing it anyway. And the more you do it, the least scared you become. You're just training your brain to accept fear and to accept that some situations are not dangerous. And so that's what happened for me. So I booked the flight, and then I had no choice. My first stop was Thailand. It's often seen as the easiest country in Asia. It's where most people go first. And so that's also why it was chosen. Also, the tickets were not so expensive compared to other places. And I didn't want to be like everyone else. I didn't want to go to the beach. So I refused to go in the southern Thailand. So I went into the northern part of Thailand, because it's also super nice, but when people think about Thailand, they don't really think about that. In the north, it's more jungle, elephants, temples, and it's a bit colder. And I'm really happy I chose that. So I landed in Bangkok. I think we spent maybe 1 day or two visiting. I'm not even sure. And then we went to Chiang Mai by bus. I loved everything. I felt so... Everything was so different. It was... I don't know what happened the day we arrived in Bangkok, but I think there was some kind of celebration. So everyone was in the street. It was very bright, noisy, and it was hot. I don't know how to explain, but it was so amazing. The air itself was different from what I was used to. And I was so happy, and I realized it was not that hard. I was afraid this whole time of nothing, because people are nice. They see you're a foreigner. If you do something that is not okay, they will tell you, and they will not take it personally because they know the culture is different. And as long as you are nice and you try to understand, and when someone tells you something, you accept it and you learn, it's perfect. You don't have to be afraid of anything. So we went to Chiang Mai and we visited the city, got used to the new climate. It's a small city. It's way more chill than when we were in Bangkok, of course. We were staying in some kind of a hostel, so there were a lot of foreigners. It was nice to exchange where to go in the city, what to do. And we went to see some elephants. We really tried to go to one that was ethical, if it really exists, but we were not allowed to touch them. We were just the both of us in the forest with the guy, and we were looking for the elephants. And then he was like, "Oh, they're here. You can look at them." And so that's what we did. And it's a bit impressive because we were there, they were eating, and sometimes they were moving, they were going somewhere else, and it was very scary to have them next to you walking, and they don't really care if you are there or not. So I was so scared that they would like push us or something if they are not careful, because they're very big. But then everything went fine. We had a really cool moment with those big animals. So we were doing that in the morning, and then we were supposed to go back after our thing was finished, but the guy didn't want to bring us back to Chiang Mai because we were the only two, and so he didn't want to drive only for us. So we were stuck until the next group arrived, and then we had to leave with the other group. So we spent the whole day in this place. It was nice, but it wasn't planned. So we were very angry at them for keeping us hostages, because we had no way to go back home without them. We were lost in the mountains. They came to fetch us up, so we could do nothing. We were just stuck waiting for them to deign to drive us back home. So that was not so nice. But then we just had a nap, chilling, looking at the elephants. Could be worse. Then we went in a scooter to do the Mae Hong Song Loop. So it's a road or a circuit of several days that you can do, and it's at the border with Myanmar. It's really at the northwest part of Thailand. It was so nice to be out in the countryside. I remember the guy from our hostel told us to go straight for 2 red lights and then go right. And I was like, what do you mean? Like, it cannot be the only way. But actually, there were no red lights. There was so little of them that, 2 red lights really brought us very, very far away. And then we went right, and there was just one road. So we couldn't get lost, really. And then we just had to follow the road, and we would stop when we were tired because we were on a small scooter. It was nice to enjoy the view, but we had also our backpacks. It was not the most comfortable thing, but we really could enjoy the villages, the view, Because when you are in a scooter, you are so close to the outside. It's not like when you're in a car. Could stop, take pictures. And really, we were in the countryside. We passed some villages that I'm sure not many tourists see. We saw some viewpoints. Then we would see something nice. Then we would leave the road and go to a small little road in the fields, in the rice fields, in the mountains. It was really an amazing thing to do. And then we arrived in Pai, which is kind of the backpacking city over there. It was a bit overwhelming to arrive there after being in the wild for a few days, because it felt so fake or so different from what we had seen. Because we arrived and they're just, take a boat tour. Do party drinking on the river. Do that. And it felt so different. And then we went to like the sunset spot and it was so crowded we couldn't even sit there. It felt really out of place with the rest that we had seen. So we just spent a night or two there because there were some sites around still, even if you don't enjoy the nightlife. Then we came back to Chiang Mai and then to Bangkok with the night train this time. It's one of my best memories from Thailand, I think, the train, because it was a sleeping train. So first of all there are seats, and then in the evening there is someone coming and changing the seats into beds. Those are the bed cars. But then if you walk outside of that, you have cars that are opened. So for example, there was one that had big doors and they were just open because it was hot. And you could see the outside and, I don't know, I see so many of those pictures of this train in Sri Lanka that people are half outside, and it really felt like this. And then I spent hours during the sunset. I was sitting at that door, my feet dangling outside of the train and looking at the landscape, the villages. And the train was very slow, so we could really see the people when we were going through the village, and it was really amazing. And then the restaurant car was very open, so all the windows were completely opened, and it was decorated with some Christmas decorations that were flying with the wind. And I don't know how to explain, but it was such a vibe, and really this train was my favorite. But then I found a cockroach in my bed, so I was not so happy and I didn't really sleep well. But outside of the sleeping cars, I loved it. I must say that I didn't really have expectations because it was my first time setting foot on the continent. I didn't really look into what I was supposed to see, so I didn't have expectations, but I still really had a good time, and I think it was a really nice introduction to Asia. I must say I felt very dumb, but I thought that in Asia everyone ate with chopsticks, and then I arrived in Thailand and they ate with spoons. I was like, what? It's not as I thought. In my mind, Asia was like Northern East Asia, and it was everywhere the same. And I'm happy that now I've learned that all of these countries are very different, and no, they don't use chopsticks in Thailand. The trip I've done, even though it is not the most touristy thing people do in Thailand, it felt very cushioned, and there was not much risk. There were so many tourists too. Thailand is an easy country to travel to. The real test was coming. After Thailand, the easy country, guess where I went? I went to China. Of course. I loved it. Imagine the crowds of Chinese New Year. The city full of people. My phone buzzing and heating because there are way too many apps taking all my data, cameras above my head, looking at me, people stopping me in the street to take pictures with me. It was so overwhelming and fascinating at once. That's how I experienced China. I must say that I was lucky because the person I went with lived there for a few months before I came to visit. So he knew the way things worked. He knew how to book tickets. He also advised me to download some apps before I came. So it was not yet the full adventure, but still, I was very impressed by China. I landed in Shanghai, and directly I was so amazed. Everything was so different. It was really the first time I had a proper culture shock. I don't know how to explain, but it really felt like another country. Well, of course, because it was, but some countries feel very more different than others. First of all, it was so clean, and the streets were so wide, and everything is written in Chinese. You cannot understand anything that's going on the signs, in front of the shops, and also very, very few Westerners. Really, I think for the 2 weeks I spent in China, I must have seen 2 or 3 white people, which is crazy. So first we spent a few days in Shanghai visiting. It's really a nice city. And also I was impressed by how cheap it was. Then we took the high-speed train to Guilin, where it's a region known for a specific type of mountains. It was really so pretty. The mountains are shaped like if they don't touch each other. So some kind of cones, because they are also not pointy at the end. They're a bit round. So imagine those round things all next to each other, but it looks like they're going until the ground in between each. Okay, I don't think this is very clear. I will put some pictures on Instagram. You can go and check it out if you want to know how it really looked. But it was very, very pretty. And it was so different from Shanghai because we took the very high-speed train. So in a few hours, we crossed half of the country, which is very huge. So I was impressed. Also, they check the passports instead of the tickets when you enter the train. So when you enter the train station, you have to scan your passport and your ticket will be recognized. They will link your passport and your ticket. I found it crazy. And then also important detail, it was Chinese New Year. So Shanghai was not very crowded, but when we went to the more countryside, it was so crowded because all of the Chinese, they have those few days of rest. So they go and visit their families in the countryside, or they go and enjoy the sights of their own country. So the place where we went was very pretty and touristy for the locals. So it was very, very crowded. We went from Guilin to another city very next doors, but we took hours and hours to get there because there were too much traffic jam. The bus just stopped. And then we were so annoyed, we finished on foot and we arrived before the bus. And everyone was a bit shocked by us because we were walking alongside the highway with all the cars stops, and everyone would open their window and be like, "What are you doing?" And they were meaning, "What are you doing walking on that road?" But they also said, "What are you doing in China? Why did you come?" And yeah, they all wanted to chat. So everything was on the phones. We had the app to pay and an app to have everything else you might need. So for example, the bus tickets, we just had to click on bus ticket. And then we had a QR code that allowed us to enter the buses. And this was automatically changed depending on the city where we were. So they just tracked us at any time. It was convenient for the bus tickets, but I must say we really felt tracked, because also when checking in a hotel, they have to scan your face and your passport and everything. Then they send it to the police to know at all times where foreigner tourists are. And if the hotel doesn't have the face recognition device, you have to go to the police to tell them which hotel you went to and etc. so they know where you are. So we felt very safe. Also, he told me that in the city there are really not much thieves. You can leave your bag unlocked in the street, nobody will take it, because they are too afraid of what will happen to them if they do something like that. And they will for sure be recognized because there are cameras literally everywhere. So I really felt very safe, because as a woman you never know what can happen in the street, but there I felt very safe. But this has a big drawback, that the locals, they are watched at all times, and even us as travelers, we had a pressure that the police knew at all times where we were. And at some point, I talked about it in a previous episode, but I had an issue and I went to the train without having a ticket, and then the police bothered me. Anyway, go listen to that episode. We spent New Year's in Guilin, and I must say I was expecting a big celebration, a big parade, but we have that in foreign countries for Chinese New Year, so I thought it would be the same. But actually people are more in the countryside, in their families, and there was not a special place where celebrations were ongoing. So we had a nice meal with the people from our hotel. It was very nice. We had a lot of traditional Chinese food, which was very nice, very chill. I loved it. But I'm quite grateful that I was not alone for my first time in China. I think it would have been very overwhelming, or at least isolating, because I felt safe, things were easy to organize, so that wouldn't have been a problem. But there are no foreigners, and people don't really speak English. They sometimes are a bit afraid of getting involved with foreigners, or they can talk to you but it's only business-like. So I think it would have really felt hard to connect with anyone, and then a bit lonely. So I'm happy that it happened like this, but I must say I would really like to go back, because I spent only 2 weeks, because it was the time I could go without having a visa. So that's what I did. But now I really feel like I want to see more, to see the landscapes, to go into the west and see all those crazy things that happen there. We also went to the south, to Guangzhou, and it's crazy how the climate changed. In Shanghai, it was super cold. I was wearing my big puffer, the beanie, and then in Guangzhou it was summer, and it was so warm. I was really impressed by this country, how big it is, and how quickly we went from one climate to the other. After having spent time in Thailand and in China, I was way less scared of being in Asia, of course, because also I had tried country from more Southeast Asia, Thailand and China, which are very different. So I was happy to have experienced both before being left alone. I was obviously still scared because I felt like everything went well, but because I wasn't alone and the person I was with knew, and it was not his first time in Asia. So I felt sheltered, but then I was also eager to see how I would manage, how I would do on my own. I was trying to prove to myself that I was able to do it, I was about to find out what it felt like to travel alone, because my next stop was Indonesia on my own. I will tell you all about that in the next episode of this series. I just want to remind you that you don't have to be fearless to go, you just have to go.